How about that? Is that better? Thank you. When that happened. Anyway, good deal. All right, good. Um, Hold on, let me check this anyway. So we're going to have a little bit of administrative here. Let me get that started. Hold on. That probably says you can't hear me. Why is that not coming? Yeah, I'm muted. Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay. So the way we have a few questions that have been in, but everyone here is if you have a question, raise your hand. John has a mic and we'll ask you to use the mic and hold the mic out in front of you like a lollipop like that and speak. So that way, if you say it, hopefully we won't have to repeat it for the people on the computer, so on the internet, so that we can go through like that. People on the computer, I would suggest you chat in your questions if you have any, and that way, and then we can read those out loud to everyone here. Any questions on that? Anything? And I'll introduce everybody. I'm Clyde, one of your Dharma leaders. This is Thia, and this is Larry. We have to kind of move these things around for the people on the internet. Okay. Any questions here about how are we doing this? Okay. So we'll get started then. And any questions, this is going to be about your practice, about the teachings, the Dharma, feel free to ask those. Any type of questions is open, because this is just an opportunity for you. If you've ever had any questions or curious about things, this is a chance for us to try our best to answer those. So you want to do that first question? The first question we have is, what advice would you have for talking to little kids about the very simplest basics of mindfulness? Also, I'm thinking about how to especially plant the seeds for loving kindness, patience, generosity for the kids themselves and for others.
Thank you for that question. Two things come to mind. The first is resources. There are many on the internet for children. If you Google basically this question, and go to a site called mindful.org, there are specific age gaps that they talk about, age classes that they talk about. But one thing in particular that I remembered from a while ago is age 4 is about it. You might see it in pre-kindergarten, but kindergarten is where it begins as far as educationally. And the meditation time is 2 minutes. That's what you start with. And what they are asking the children to do is to try to keep your mind as still as your eyes closed, as still as your hands, as still as your shoulders. Try that stillness with your mind for 2 minutes. And when you feel your mind going away, try to bring it back to your breath. And if it just keeps going away and going away and going away, don't worry about it. We're going to try this again tomorrow. The other thing is, there is a wonderful mindfulness teacher in Vancouver. His name is Zung Va, D-Z-U-N-G, Va, V-O. We had the privilege of caring for a family member of his years ago. No death, no pain, no pain, no death, the Thich Nhat Hanh book. He put that in our library at Hospice and Palliative Care Charlotte Region. He is an international expert on teen adolescent grief. And with teen and adolescent, you've got a little more chance there as far as to slow down and quiet the mind a little bit. But what you're ultimately looking for is an understanding that in this stillness and others being still, there's a peacefulness. And that peacefulness can be kept through loving kindness, through kindness, through how we teach each other. It's amazing what happens when you get a room of kids quiet. They get a lot nicer. And it happens so rare we don't really know about it, but they get a lot nicer. So those are some of the goals.
I love this question because I wish that I had had this practice when I was a child, and especially a teenager and college age. Can you imagine how much better off we'd all be now? The children in my neighborhood that come to my house that I try to work with, the way that I try to teach them is in nature, when we're in the garden, to look at the life cycles of things, death and birth, and the natural order that's so present in the garden, and to encourage them to realize that, you know, everything that is born also passes. And it's an easy way to teach children about a pretty heavy subject. We also meditate with sounds. You know, the furthest away sound and the closest up sound, the loudest sound, the quietest sound. And that's a very powerful thing for children to practice. And a couple more things. I try to commend them when they are particularly kind or patient or nice to each other. You know, I just say, oh, that was so generous of you. And so they hear, you know, words they're big words for little kids, but I think always pointing out when they're kind of exhibiting the behavior that the Dharma teaches. And lastly, part of the Pali canon are the Jataka tales. And you don't hear much about them, but they are kind of like the Aesop's fables of the Buddhist world. And they're many volumes. They're actually written for adults, but they are supposedly the previous lives of the Buddha. And they involve animals and lots of interactions with animals, and sometimes the Buddha is an animal, and there are children's versions of the Jataka tales that are really easy for kids to digest. So, great question.
Yeah, I haven't worked with children and that, but I do, do get the Lion's Roar magazine, and you'll see a lot of books for children on introducing children to Buddhism, to mindfulness, and how to work with them. So you can actually see that on or Google it somehow, and there's lots of books now on working with children. Are there any questions in here? Anybody have any questions here? We don't want to do all these. We want to make sure everybody has some or online or comment. Yeah, we want to have this kind of an open forum.
Yes.
We'll go bring the mic over.
Yes, in this tradition, what are the teachings on what people might think of as perhaps reincarnation or continuation or afterlife? Are there any, just what are, I guess, the teachings for this one?
People hear it in Zoom.
Did y'all hear that question? The people about reincarnation or afterlife? I'll take a stab at that just to start us off. It ranges from everything to nothing goes on to there's something that goes on after that. My understanding of what I've read, or my understanding of it, which there are different views of this, is that my karmic actions will continue on. Not that flow of the karmic actions. That's why karma is so important. There's not the body, the physical, there's no I that's going to go on, but there's these karmic, the in, temporary I that's arising and passing away each moment, uh, has the ability to create karma, the positive or negative karma. And it's the positive, well, it's both positive and negative will pass on. That's why karma is so important, because that's what is, in my understanding, what I read, it's what continues on.
I want to make a distinction.
Okay.
There's also a great distinction between a reincarnation and rebirth. So it is not, the teachings don't point towards reincarnation, which would, as Clyde says, involve a personal entity returning. It's more about the rebirth of karmic residue that takes a form again. It could be a different gender, or it could be an animal and not a person, depending on your actions. In the Buddhist cosmology, we can sort of rise up and down, and we can be born in different realms. So you do not have to believe in rebirth to benefit from these teachings. And, you know, that's a completely personal decision. Larry, anything?
Larry?
Just one thing, it's a very personal thing, but for me, in a part of the insight tradition, is that I have a chance to, with my karma, to change in this human body, in this earthly body. I have an opportunity to develop, and that my karma, my actions can influence in such a way that not only are they passed down to others, but maybe even passed down to me a little bit.
Yes. Question here.
The question over here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello,
I'm trying to help you.
I do Buddhist chanting. So how is the Buddhist chanting different from Buddhist meditation?
The difference between Buddhist chanting and Buddhist meditation, or how they relate. Great question. Y'all do it.
I'll take a step, yeah.
You'll take it, good.
Yeah.
I don't chant.
So in our tradition, we don't chant, but in many Buddhist traditions, there is a chanting, and there are some Theravadan insight communities. Mark Numberg's community, he spoke last week, his community opens with a chant every week, and I really believe that the chants were the way to pass down the teachings, to help people remember the teachings, because it was an oral tradition. I think it's a very beautiful tradition, and personally, I wish that we did do chanting. If you go on retreat, you will usually do some chanting as you take the precepts and enter into a more sacred container. But yeah, it's just different approaches from different traditions.
And I think chanting is also a way of getting the mind settled, just like meditation does. If you chant, like I said, I have not practiced that, but anything you do over and over like that, the chanting brings you into that space. It calms the mind, clears the mind. An example would be Sufis that do the whirling. It's that calming and centering and coming into a simple space.
I'm good.
Okay. Great questions.
Thank you.
Maybe you could teach us.
Maybe.
Oh, I do have one thing I just thought of. Bhante G, Bani Gunaratana from the Bhavana Society in West Virginia. They do a lot of chanting there, and he has a wonderful book. And the thing I like about the book is it's Pali on one side and English on the other. So there's an opportunity. And when I have a copy of this, and when I read it, I do it very slowly. I probably destroy the Pali. But at the same time, those sounds begin to resonate. I have a 8-minute recording of Om Mani Padme Hum, And it's beautiful, the harmonies, the music, and it's very settling. And the thing I like about that is it's settling, it's centering. And as Thea said, you know, it's a way of passing down the teachings.
If anybody has any questions, and be sure and just type them in, chat them in if you have them online. Well, yeah, we have one back over here.
John, get his steps in today.
Good.
Thank you. The question about reincarnation got me thinking about the step just before that, which is the end of the earthly form. And I actually haven't delved much into this in reading. So is there any prescribed method for dealing with the end of the earthly form and saying goodbye to someone whose earthly form has expired, for lack of a better word?
Say that last part again, the last part of your question.
So I mean, you know, there's a lot of different ways cultures and traditions handle someone who passed away, right? For lack of a better expression. So I just didn't know I haven't really looked much into this. Hopefully the way it's off, but you never know, right? Like, is there any prescribed method for best dealing with the end of life, or how the body is taken care of at the end of life, or anything like that?
Okay.
Where might I reference in material about that?
So this has to do with, do you understand that online? It's about the methods of dealing with end of life with the body. How do you handle the body at the point of death or before death? Both.
I think I'm asking after.
After death. After, how do you handle the body?
Or, you know, and one's life celebrated, or I'm just wondering.
Okay.
I know that might be an odd topic, but it's
Okay. Well, I'm gonna let Larry address this issue.
Thanks. Good question. Of course, I work in hospice care, and we do occasionally have the honor of caring for someone who knows the Dharma. And I was just talking with one of my chaplains today in terms of the person I mentioned, and as we cared for his loved one. The primary element, the primary goal of care, especially in a life-limiting situation, this doesn't, of course, or can't apply to sudden traumatic death, but in a life-limiting illness situation, what you're looking for, especially near the time, is peace. You want a very peaceful environment. The hospice inpatient setting is about as perfect place as you can get in the West for someone who knows the Dharma to pass from this human life. Once the passing has occurred, there is a lot of silence. Sometimes there is the making of origami. There's putting the paper together. Swans is one thing that are made, but there is a stillness, and the family will request, and our hospice especially will acknowledge, they like to have 12 hours. We can give them 6, but of stillness in that room. Nothing's there, nothing's moved, no one comes in. There's that quietness, there's that stillness, there's that peace, in order that whatever is going to be taking place has the opportunity to take place. And there's not earthly interference, there's not unnecessary interference. Typically in a hospice setting, there are no bells and whistles, there are no alarms going off. And then from that time forward, we have a ritual whereby everyone who's there acknowledges and walks out together. But the primary emphasis is peace. The primary emphasis is that being still and allowing the spirit to go where it goes.
Quickly want to mention 2 things. One is the Po Wa Tibetan ceremony, which is you're with the dying person and you don't touch the person as they're dying. You're encouraging their spirit to leave the body, and they believe if you're touching them, it's pulling them back into their earthly connections. It's a really interesting practice. At Southern Dharma, they almost always every year have a retreat on death and dying, and there are two nuns, Zen nuns, that lead it. You can go through the ritual with them. They encourage that if the person can die at home, and if it's a meditator in a very quiet place, as Larry says, much stillness, much quiet, then the body should lay in state for 3 days without being touched, except maybe some dry ice and in a cool room, so that the energy can completely leave the body. And after that, there's a 49-day practice of a daily ritual of chanting incense and prayers to help the energy make its way through the ethers. So I'm very interested in this. I'm glad you asked that question. I would like to have that sort of a death.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, my question, comes from discussions that we're having about like what our wishes be, right? So I'm trying to understand, how this applies, Dharma is.
You can get a permit to actually have a body in your house, but you need a permit to actually have a dead body in your house. So that's quite straightforward, but it's a good thing to know about, so you can be prepared if you choose to go that route. And these nuns will actually come to your house and facilitate this ceremony, so I can give you that if you're interested after tonight. Thanks.
Well, we have a question now, a couple questions from the internet. This question says, what is the difference between this Buddhist practice and the Buddhist religion? And that's kind of a good segue here from the standpoint that what we were just talking, some of the stuff we're talking about when we talk about death and what we do around that is probably done more within a monastic environment too. What we consider this practice, this Buddhist practice, let everybody know we are a non-profit educational organization, and that we teach everything based on the teachings of the Buddha. So this Buddhist practice we feel is available for everybody. Anybody can benefit from mindfulness practice, from meditation practice. And that's the mindfulness, even the teachings on the Four Noble Truths. Anyone can benefit from those. Anyone can practice those. My understanding of the Buddhist religion, like I said, in a monastic environment, is going to be more of a religious practice. We see, in my understanding, we see Buddha as a teacher, not as a god. So he's been taught, and all the Buddhists have been teaching, but it's not he wasn't a god. Y'all want to comment more on that, on the difference there? That's a big question.
It is a big question. At the retreat that I just attended, there were probably 50-50 religious Buddhists and practicing secular Buddhists there. And so there was a lot of prostrating and bowing and reverential worship, and so that I think is how some people express how these teachings affect their heart, and it is to them a deeply spiritual path. And I think again, it's a very personal thing. It can be, you can be a Presbyterian and practice these teachings, or any religion and practice these teachings, and some choose to take it into a formal religious setting, and so that's supported on a lot of retreats, and it's actually, I think, a very beautiful thing to witness. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, just real quickly, as far as Buddhist religion goes, remember a lot of it is cultural. A lot of it is from countries, and it's sort of, we talk about cradle Catholics or cradle Christians, cradle Buddhism. It's that way from the beginning. It's part of the culture, and it's expressed in, even in different cultures, it's expressed in different ways.
We'll go back to one question that we got ahead. How to keep the mind in the present moment? How do you keep the mind in the present moment?
Anybody?
Yeah, but that's the big question also. And when I first got the question, and that's really what we do, and it kind of ties with another question we have. I'm going to tie these two together. What are some short phrases or sayings that you especially like or have helped you understand something, anything about meditation, mindfulness, or Buddhism? So to tie those two together for me is this phrase, this moment is like this. This moment is like this. And I use it every day in whatever situation I'm in. And I feel like, okay, this moment's like this. I'm sitting in traffic. This moment's like this. I'm having a great meal. This moment is like this. That helps me come back to the present moment, and also to understand that present moment, to bring and be present and go, can I be with this moment? And we do that in our practice. When we do our meditation, we're learning to be with what's arising in this moment. So what I'm doing off the cushion then is going, this moment's like this. And if I want to add to it, I go, can I be with this moment? How can I be with this moment? Am I trying aversion to this moment or pushing it away? But that's my mind. So I'll let you.
Yeah, I use that one a lot. I'd say right now it's like this, honey. I try to coach myself to just stick with it. Another one that I like is, especially if it's something is difficult, I say, and this too, to include everything in my practice, even the stuff I don't choose and don't prefer. And this too is part of my practice. It's part of my awakening training. One of my favorite is wear the self like a loose garment. When I really get wrapped up in how I think it should be and how it should go, and I can't believe they said that to me, and all of that, just, kind of loosen up a little bit on how if you're easily offended, or you don't feel like you've been respected or something like that. Just, it's more a practice of effortlessness, of letting go, letting go, letting go, because the present moment is always right here, ready to be acknowledged. It's more about aligning with what's already happening than trying to make anything happen. Um, Lastly, not personal, not perfect, and not permanent. Very, very helpful little mantra.
I give myself a break by reminding myself that being mindful in the present moment is impermanent. It's going to go away, and then you bring it back. I'm a big one for feeling it right here, and then as I come out, feeling it here. A phrase that resonates with me is one of the first I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh. In breath, present moment, out breath, wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. And then the phrases I used in the beginning tonight, not my, but collectively. There's breathing, there's awareness, there's meditation, with lots of breaths in between.
And just to find that how to keep the mind in the present moment is what we do. Is practice.
Mhm.
It's the meditation practice. That's so important. It's just practicing, having a meditation practice where you sit, and that's training the mind to come back to the present moment over and over and over, so that we know how to do that. And when we're off the cushion, we can always come back. We can always come back. We know how to do that. So we have time for what? One more question that we have online here. I know of several Sangha members who are struggling with health issues right now. How do you personally deal with pain or difficulty? Is there a particular practice or insight that you have found helpful?
So the first noble truth is there is suffering. And so I remind myself that I'm not the only person that feels physical and emotional pain. And I think of others who might be feeling sorrow or sadness or illness, and think of the solidarity of sharing that with them and hoping that we can be a good student of pain. You know, right now it's like this, it hurts. And that pain is simply a message from the body, from the brain, saying that something is out of balance. Or in the case of death or dying, a natural process is occurring that is difficult to be with. So I coach myself around, you know, what is this sensation like? I breathe into it, and I really work with sitting with strong determination in my meditation to see how long I can be with it without judgment, without pushing it away. And I give myself a lot of compassion, because it's a tough thing to meditate when you're in any kind of pain or distress. But first noble truth, suffering. Second noble truth is understanding it. And so that's our practice too. That's a huge, important piece of our practice.
From an end-of-life healthcare perspective, we look at the illness two ways. One is what the illness is, and the second is what does the illness mean? We can't necessarily control what the illness is, but we can examine what the illness means. What kind of meaning is it making in us? And going especially to what Thea said, as far as to look at that and to know that you know there is suffering. It is a part of life. It is a part of where we are, but to look at it in such a way that we don't necessarily look for causes. We try to reduce agonizing as much as possible, and be present with it in such a way that we make a meaning out of it that can not necessarily be positive, but can bring peace and can bring a content that this is a part of our human existence.
And that was a great question. That's a big question too. For me, for when a difficulty, I have two practices that I use. Thea mentioned one of them. I use self-compassion practice. May I be held in compassion. I send compassion to myself. I hold myself in compassion. And it's incredibly powerful for me. The second one practice is metta. Send yourself loving kindness metta. I mean, that's what it's there for. You can, when you're in difficulty, just, you know, may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy. It may not relieve the pain or the difficulty, but it helps me hold the pain and the difficulty and be present with it. So,
Great questions.
you want to?
That's why we call it the noble truth of suffering, is that if we can bear up under it and be with it, it creates a nobility that's not possible otherwise.
Okay, thank you so much for participating in these questions. It's great. Could you elaborate on the self-compassion practice? Very quickly, it's real simple. I sit there, and it's not a self-pity practice. It's and one thing I had to learn was that, you know, we used to have to give people compassion, had to give it to someone or receive it from someone. Compassion is all around us. It's just sitting out there, and I can bring it into myself, and I go, this is difficult. This is a hard time. It's no one's fault. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm not trying to change anything. I'm not blaming. I'm not judging. It's just really difficult right now. And I'm just going to be with it. It's just a difficult time. And just sit with that for a little while. And then you can go into your meditation if you'd like to. It's a pretty simple practice. So we're going to do the announcements real quickly right now. I've got a special announcement.